Dirty Birds, what's up? And welcome to another edition of Falcons Final Whistle. I'm your host, Will McFadden. I am joined, as always, by Tori McElhaney and Terrin Waack, and we are here hoping the Falcons get their fourth straight win. They're going to be back at home against the Seattle Seahawks. It's not an NFC South opponent. It's a cross-coast opponent. They've got a West Coast opponent coming in. I guess, Tori, right off the top, what are your kind of overall thoughts on this matchup?
I think it's one that on paper, I think could lean towards the Falcons, especially the way that they've been playing the last couple of weeks offensively.
Pretty well.
I feel, right, yeah. I feel that there is a sense of confidence in this locker room, and that's something that I think to this point in other seasons, you didn't necessarily feel as strongly. And I feel like guys are starting to figure out how to play together. I think they're moving in the right direction, which is what you would want in week 7 with a new coaching staff, new players, all that kind of stuff. So I feel like this is a game on paper that the Falcons should be favored in. But of course, we're in the NFL and on paper means jack diddly squat. So anything can happen. But I am looking forward to this matchup a little bit because also I think that the way Seattle plays and the way the Falcons play, particularly defensively and what their strengths are, mirror each other. Mm-hmm. So, and I think in a lot of statistical categories, they're right there with each other. So I'm curious to see how that all plays out.
Yeah. Terrin, do you sense your confidence level rising kind of in this team?
Yes and no. I'm a very neutral person when it comes to confidence.
You are.
Because as everyone likes to say each week, it's the National Football League. Upsets happen, and I'd rather stay neutral than be upset.
I love that.
So,
yeah.
I'm like a very black
just
and white
nihilism across the board. Just don't get your hopes up and you'll never be let down.
You never know. So I'd hopes don't get up or down.
I love that.
I'd rather be surprised than disappointed is what I like to say.
Okay.
Oh, that's a good one.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hope for the best.
That was a little more positive than my first phrasing.
That was good. I like that. I like that.
I think something that'll be really interesting is they are coming off this really strong 3-0 run where the buzz was super high. Yeah. They just swept the divisional opponents for the first time around. And so you can feel that energy and that enthusiasm. But at the same time, it's like, all right, are you going to maintain that? Mm-hmm. Or are you going to go back to being, like me, neutral and think of this next opponent as the next opponent and forget what just happened? And that was actually something literally today I asked Marquise Williams about, because as someone who was on last year's staff, he rode the roller coaster a little bit more.
Especially early.
Yeah, and you were just saying, they haven't had this in a while. They haven't had this feeling, this excitement in a while. And so my question was, how is the coaching staff handling it? How are you making sure everyone is staying on the right page and not getting overly excited or overly eager given what just happened? And he said Raheem Morris does a really good job of being what happened, next game. You can't look too far ahead and you can't look backward. All you can deal with is the present moment.
It's
Speaking my language.
No, it is true too. And we now have our incredible video team goes into the locker room after every win and is able to capture Raheem Morris's post-game kind of chat with the team. And every time it's this, who's next? He uses other language that I'm not going to say on this podcast. I would, but I don't want to be.
We have the ability to beep.
I was going to say, Sam, hit the bleep.
Right, yeah. No, but he's always, after every single game in that locker room that they have won, it's who's next. Mm-hmm. And I think that is honestly a very psychological tactic, that they're even in this moment of riding the high of a win in this case, and he's already we're moving on.
You can't get caught up in it.
Right.
You can't ride the roller coaster.
No, yeah.
Season's too long for that.
Right.
Lazy river, not a roller coaster.
As soon as you think you've arrived, it'll kick you right back down. So and this week's opponent is a great example of that. The Seahawks started the season 3-0. They're coming into this matchup 3-3, right? So they were trending one way, and now they've trended kind of the other way just as hard. But let's really quickly get into kind of an injury update. We are recording this Thursday afternoon, so the Thursday injury report has not come out yet. So this is all really Wednesday's numbers, but I think they give us an indication to start the week of how these two teams are shaping up. So the Falcons had a few guys on there who were just resting, so we're not going to include those, but they've got 5 guys listed. Antonio Hamilton was limited with a back injury on Wednesday. Nate Landman limited again with calf and quad injuries, but he played this past week, as did Antonio Hamilton. So, we'll see what happens there. Lorenzo Carter did not practice with a concussion. Justin Simmons did not practice as he is kind of dealing with that hamstring injury that flared up in the game. And then Troy Anderson did not practice on Wednesday with the knee injury that has kept him out of the last 2 games. So we'll see what happens with Troy there, but obviously 3 defensive names who didn't practice on Wednesday. That could be key going up against the league's best passing offense. For the Seahawks, there's a lot of guys on this injury report, so I'm not going to list them all. Stone Forsythe, though, what a name!
Yeah,
I just add what a freaking name right there, Stone Forsythe. Offensive tackle, he didn't practice. They've got a guard, a center who didn't practice as well. A couple of their cornerbacks out, and their safeties also, one didn't practice. Jarek Reed was limited with a knee injury. Julian Love, importantly for the Seahawks, because he has been a huge part of their defense this season. He was a full participant with a hamstring injury. So that was kind of a look at the injury situation. But let's dig into one topic that has really been on everybody's minds. The players, the coaching staff, we have been asked about it, and it's the pass rush.
Yeah.
So, Tori, Falcons have 5 sacks on the season.
Yeah.
Fewest in the league. They are pressuring the quarterback on only 23% of dropbacks, which is the lowest rate in the league. Do you think this is more about a scheme thing for the Falcons, or is it more about just getting production from the players?
I do think it's about production and individual matchups and individual moments. I think that the Falcons, to this point, are blitzing at a very high level. They're a top 10 in terms of their blitz rate. And what's so interesting, and this is a conversation that Will and I think, geeked out on all day yesterday, because I was looking at this and I was like, if you look at the other teams in the top 10 who have a top 10 blitz rate, their quarterback pressure rate very much coincides with that. If they are blitzing, they're getting to the quarterback, they're causing pressures, they're causing havoc. The Falcons, out of everybody else in the top 10, was the only team that had a top 10 blitz rate that had a pressure rate in the 20s.
Yep.
I wanted to make sure that, I know that's a lot of numbers that I threw at y'all, but safe to say that means that the Falcons are blitzing a lot and they're not getting home.
It's not correlating.
It's not correlating. And so when it's correlating with other teams that have a good pressure rate. So I say all that to say that, to me, it is more about just like guys got to win up front. And so far you see that in kind of like fits and starts and kind of flashes here and there, but you're not seeing it consistently. And the Falcons, I mean, at the end of the day, people are asking in the mailbox or on radio or on TV or whatever, like, why is this not working? Why is it not working? And to be honest, there are a lot of different layers to all of this. I think you could say that the Falcons aren't sending, don't have as many loaded fronts and not sending guys because they are wanting to help out on the back end with the secondary. It's also just, at the end of the day, guys got to win.
Yep.
And I think really and truly, that's what it boils down to, is winning up front. And so far, and the numbers speak for themselves, only 23% of pressure on dropbacks, which is worse in the league. Like, that number is concerning to this point in the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think the key here to me is that you want to be able to find ways to generate pressure without inherently kind of like losing the structure of your defense.
Right.
And
who you are.
Yeah, and sacrificing what your defense is really built to do, which is kind of throw up that tent on the passing game for the opponent and not allow explosive plays, not allow these deep completions, not allow them to move the ball down the field in kind of the easiest way possible, which is through the air. And it's kind of, I think the search for the pass rush could get the Falcons in trouble if they do get away from that defensive identity a little bit. And the reason I say that is when they send at least 5 guys at the quarterback, so they're sending one extra man, they're 24th in defensive success rate among teams this season. When they send 6 guys at the quarterback, they're 28th in defensive success rate. So the more guys they're sending to get after the quarterback,
it's
the worse they're doing on defense.
And that's the problem.
Yes.
That's why there is such this like huge discrepancy in people being like, oh, like do this. And it's like, they've done a little bit of everything.
Right.
And they've sacrificed different things in order to do that. And at the end of the day, it's like, what more is there to show? What more is there to do that you haven't already tried a little bit and it didn't work?
Yeah.
That's the conundrum right now.
It really is. And I mean, that's the balance that you have to strike. And ultimately, you can look back and say they're still winning games, right, Terrin? So like, you don't want to throw everything out. It's fortunate that you're winning these games, but you've got to kind of tweak, I think, the mix a little bit, and which is why we probably keep circling back to it's the guys. Like this defensive line was a standout group in training camp. They added to it late with Matthew Judon. We are seeing Arnold Ebiketie get some pressure. We are seeing Lorenzo Carter at times get some pressure. Like, I think they like the guys in this room. And Raheem had a quote kind of earlier this week talking about, they know where they're at, and they missed some layups, but that they do kind of like where it is going, that it is ticking upwards. Do you kind of agree with that, Terrin, or do you think that's a little bit of like positive coach speak?
I think that's a little positive coach speak, but I'm not necessarily disagreeing with him in a sense of they can like where they're at without liking where they at when it comes to the pass rush, because we looked at it last week where when it comes to what they're doing in the secondary and shutting down explosive plays, they're top 10, top 5 team in that regard. So it's like, do you have to pick your poison? If they're doing really well in this regard, are you okay with sacrificing that? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, for sure.
And that's the question.
It's the scale. Like, which one do you want more? Do you want all the sacks on the quarterback, or do you want all these interceptions and these big pass plays broken up? Like, you want both.
I think where it would
can you get both?
Have the biggest impact is kind of like eliminating these longer drives. It would impact time of possession. It would impact third down conversion. It's great that they're number 1 in the league in yards per reception allowed. They're number 1 in the league in yards after catch per reception allowed. So they are, again, putting up that tent, making you throw it underneath, and then rallying to make the tackle. So that's what this defense is designed to do. It is doing that at a high level. If the cost of that execution is the pass rush, again, maybe that's the philosophy here, but you would like to see more than 5 sacks on the season.
Well, and too, something that, Will, you brought up, I can't remember if this was yesterday or the day before, but, going back to this quote from Raheem about, we feel like there's progress and we do feel like we're trending in the right direction. But also at the exact same time, Andy Dalton had the most time in the pocket on Sunday of any other game that he has played in.
Yep.
Which, granted, it's only been a couple of games. It's not like we're not talking about.
Was Bryce Young after week 2 or 3?
I think 3.
Okay,
I could be wrong though.
Yeah, so it's just maybe 3 games sample size for the Red Rocket.
There is. I will caveat that by saying that, but still, I still think that speaks a bit to where this pass rush is.
And to the eye test, like the completions, like AJ Terrell had next gen stats. It was 0.7 yards of separation
it's
for
like,
the
what
receivers.
Are you gonna do?
Yeah, so it's like they're still playing tight coverage, but those completions were at the intermediate part of the field.
Right.
So that is like, if I was another team's offensive coordinator, knowing even that the Falcons are trying to prevent those downfield passes, I might say to my quarterback, hey, Gino, like, pat the ball for 1 extra second. Let's see if we can, let's let the receivers kind of almost do a scramble drill or something down the field and take your chances. Again, the Falcons, I think, are well equipped to still defend that because they've got smart guys on the back end, but we'll see how this ends up ultimately shaping things moving forward.
I was interested that you picked this quote because what I think back to from, again, this is still last week when asked a lot about the pass rush, was that they haven't been in position to confidently pass rush because they've been such tightly contested games. Carolina was kind of tightly contested until the final quarter. I feel like that last drive, if it hadn't been picked off, you don't know how things were going to go. So maybe you're still hanging your hat on that. But if there was an opportunity to slam the door a bit earlier and get these opportunities, it would have been last week. And now we're going to say it's this week. It's always the next opportunity. But like,
it is.
Yeah.
That was something that kept being used as an explanation, not an excuse, when it came to the pass rush.
Yeah. I know Grady Jarrett was asked about it this week, and I thought what he said was interesting. Like, you can't panic that it's not there, that it's not happening yet, but there does need to be this sense of urgency that we got to get it fixed. Like that was kind of his talking point for the week. And I thought that was a good way to be like, look, like, we're not sitting back here just being like, oh, well, like, we're not getting after the quarterback. Like, there is this, I do believe him when he says that there's a sense of urgency to figure this out.
Yeah.
What that means, I don't know. I'm not paid that money to figure that out, but I can sure as heck talk about it.
What would you like to see? Like, if we're putting Coach
You're not getting an extra pay for this.
I know.
Yeah, right.
I was hoping for a coach's salary,
Let's
but
add it to your responsibilities.
Exactly.
Go ahead and fix the pass rush while
right,
you're at it.
Well, something that we talked about was like stunts, loops, twists, all that kind of stuff when we were talking about this like blitzing and pressure rate and adding kind of more to that, because something that we talked about very early on in the season was how we felt like it was almost like a vanilla type of defense. There wasn't a lot of things happening. They're playing pretty straight up and down, and they weren't really sending that many guys in the first couple of games. And it was one of those things where it's like, maybe they're holding stuff close to their chest. If you are, we're 7 weeks into the season now.
How long are you going to
I think you can go ahead and
let those cards fly.
Yeah, let them fly, see what happens, try something new. I mean, at this point, it's not going to get worse. So you might as well throw some things at the kitchen sink and see what sticks. That's not the term.
Oh, I got an analogy, though.
Okay.
They're holding that wild card for the last draw of Uno.
All right.
I don't play enough Uno to really have a reaction to that.
Listen out.
Gosh.
I love Uno.
Yeah.
Knock on you.
Mm-hmm.
But a great analogy.
Do you
there.
understand it?
I assume it's a wild card for the
He has no idea what I'm talking about.
The people do.
I hope they do.
The people know.
I used to be a man of the people, but now I have to pass that along to Terrin. She is now the woman of the people. Today's episode of Falcons Final Whistle is brought to you by Zaxby's. And after a long game, when I'm tired and I need to refuel, I turn to Zaxby's. Their marinated, hand-breaded, fried to perfection chicken fingers, they hit the spot every time. Get yours with seasoned crinkle fries, a nice drink, and whichever of their 12 signature sauces you're feeling at the moment. But it always hits just right. So next time you need to refuel, go get yourself some Zaxby's. So the reason it's important for the Falcons to find a pass rush on Sunday is because of how it impacts what Seattle wants to do. Geno Smith has been at his best, and he is leading the league in passing yards. He's leading the league in attempts, so we know Seattle wants to throw the ball. Yeah. But when he's got a clean pocket, he's got a 61.7% success rate, which is tops in the league. When he is under pressure, that drops to 21st, and he is only successful about 30% of the time. So when you are talking about defending one of the best passing attacks in the league, pressure is at the forefront of what you want to do to attack this.
There is a direct correlation. I know we've been talking about like what stats correlate to what stats.
This
one does. If Geno is under pressure, he's not performing as well when he's not.
Yep.
Point blank period. It's that simple.
Panic under pressure, will they say?
I mean, I think I don't know if it's one of those things that you can fix pass rush in a week or a 2 week time period. I don't know. And I
don't think it's just a 2 week time period though, because they've been working on this since OTA started. Right. Like that's their job. That's the pass rusher, is to go affect the quarterback.
Yeah.
What I do think is once you get it going, it keeps going. I feel like sacks
they come in bunches,
kind of things.
right?
Like
that's what everybody says. Yeah, because
that's what people say. I don't know if I believe it.
It is what people, right. I mean,
I'm sorry to be negative about it. But
I'm trying to recall, because like against Carolina, obviously they had 2 interceptions. You know, like and when you do, but maybe it's confirmation bias. Maybe you hear somebody say they come in bunches, and so then you just start to notice them a little bit more. Like it is literally,
it's like when you see like, a red car, and then you only see red cars.
Exactly.
Like
Like when I was car shopping back in 2018, I suddenly started noticing like the three cars, that I was like really deciding behind. I couldn't go down the street to another stoplight without seeing like all of them at the four-way at the same time. And I was just like, what is happening? Is there a glitch in the matrix?
Is there a glitch?
Or do they just come in bunches? Yeah. Like they say. So hopefully the first sack falls on Sunday early in the game, and then we can just keep it rolling throughout the afternoon.
We shall see.
We shall see.
But Gino shall see.
Gino, I hope, is looking up at the sky a lot on Sunday.
If the roof is open.
If the roof is open. Tori, though, when we were talking about this kind of yesterday, you were thinking about this game and you said, I kind of feel like it could have the same shape, the same feel. They could attack it the same way as they did in Carolina. Why do you feel that way?
I feel that way because you look at it goes back to what I said at the top where, okay, if I'm looking at this game from a defensive standpoint, which if y'all have been listening to this podcast, y'all know that's kind of sort of how I tend to look at things is from the mind of the defense. Something that sticks out when you're looking at this Seahawks defense is that their run defense is not, their pass defense is really good. Run defense on the other side of the spectrum. They are in the bottom quartile of run defense. They are giving up on average 5 yards per carry, which if you are Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier, you're sitting there ready to rev up your engines, especially coming off of a game where the ball was put into your hands and you were able to account for 200 rushing yards. I think if you're this Falcons run offense, rushing attack, I do think the Falcons would like to go back to it. I think they would like to see that continue from one week to the next and kind of get this continuity within the run game, whether it be I think it's with the collective group overall. The offensive line, they're playing very confidently right now. I think Charlie Warner, we could talk all day long about his run blocking. Love it. Make no mistake about it. I've written about it. Terrin's written about it. Talked about it on Rise Up Tonight. That's such a big part of it. Downfield blocking with Drake London and Darnell Mooney and Ray McLeod. That part of this offense right now, after coming off of the Carolina game where they also didn't have a very productive run defense, I think could continue into this game. And it wouldn't surprise me if the game plan does follow that simply because, one, they had success this past week, but also, two, it's not the strength of the Seattle defense.
No, absolutely. You're playing to your strengths a little bit. And I know their rushing yards, like per game numbers, the Falcons are not where they have been the last couple of years, but the per play numbers are still very high. And I was actually surprised by this when I was looking at some of the player stats. Bijan is 12th in the league in carries this season. It kind of doesn't feel like that, partially because of the time of possession thing where earlier on in the season, the Falcons just didn't have like a ton of plays to run. And so they quickly kind of slipped down some of those player metrics, but also because of Tyler Allgeier's involvement, because of the amount they're passing, like that stat took me a little bit by surprise. But Terrin, we have seen different forms of this offense the past couple of weeks. That's one of my favorite things about this team so far this season is that duality that they are able to contain. Do you think that we will see kind of the run game like Terrin?
Whoa!
That was so...
Terry and Terrin.
Oh, my God. Okay, Sam, mark it again.
No! Keep it!
I've been overruled. Okay, everybody just gets to hear that in real life.
That's hilarious.
That's too funny.
All right, so Terrin, what do you expect to see?
Are we sure you wanted me to talk about this?
I'm just going to start pointing, and it's not going to be very good in an audio medium.
Yes.
Do you expect to see more of a run or pass approach?
I don't know what I expect, but what I want is still a balanced approach.
What a cop-out.
Right? But we saw such a heavy pass, such a heavy run.
But I still felt they were pretty balanced though last year. Sorry, I feel like I feel like they were more balanced last week.
No, I agree. But it all started with the run. And I do think that's what they've been wanting to get more towards. So I think we'll see more of a run this week. I think the pass was just kind of like, whoa, what happened?
Yeah.
Those numbers were insane.
Well, they were giving it to them.
Yeah.
So they were like,
might as well take it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they need to do the run again, kind of establish that all over and just keep building that run game confidence, because if you can keep establishing that on a consistent basis, that's going to open up the passing game again, where it's not just, oh, that's all we can do.
Yeah.
I also think situationally it matters too.
Agreed.
Like where these games are, how they're flowing.
Yep.
You couldn't get into run situations in, the first 5 games of the season because you're working from behind and you're in a ton of 2-minute drills. Whereas this one, you're using the run game to put the game away. So situationally, I think.
So forget the balance. Let's actually see a lead early on.
There you go.
Because then we can see what they really want to do and what they really can do. Yeah. Because even Carolina was tight until it wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, there's like an adage, I think, around the NFL kind of right now where it's you throw to win the game and then you run to like put the game away.
Mm-hmm. A bar by Kirk Cousins after the game for sure.
Yeah. And so but what I'm really curious to see, Tori, is that moment where the 12-minute mark in the first quarter, right? When you and you kind of turned to me and you were just like, it feels like the passing game is a little bit out of rhythm, right? And Kirk wasn't necessarily seeing the field as well as we had in a 2-minute drill drive. And I'm really curious to see if that specific moment takes place on Sunday or if, kind of to y'all's point, the way that they opened up the Carolina game with Bijan breaking off a big run on the first play, a big run, like 6 yards. A healthy run on the first play. Do they kind of stick with that for longer and really run like they did on their first scoring drive? Or do they kind of keep a foot in both pools and say, hey, running, throwing, we're just kind of touching the defense a little bit in all parts to see where we can probe later on? That is what I'll be looking for is like, have they learned not even a lesson, but just like, okay, we're going to take the in-game lesson that we learned against Carolina and just go ahead and apply this to the Seattle game because their defense does shape up to be pretty well attacked, I think, on the ground.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'll be looking for. But let's flip it around and talk about Seattle's passing attack, which I just mentioned is tops in the league, against Atlanta's pass defense, which has been incredible, and especially, again, in defending those explosive passing attacks. But that is what Seattle wants to do with DK Metcalf. He has, I think, the highest amount of yards on go routes this season is what I saw on Next Gen Stats. So that'll be kind of crazy is just to see the safety play, I think, in this game. Tori, what do you think about the Seattle passing attack?
I think it's one of the most significant tests to this point of this pass defense and who they are and who they want to be. It's going to be, I think the biggest thing is going to be whether or not you can get Justin Simmons fully healthy. I don't really play around with hamstring injuries, and I know those can be finicky and they can linger. And I know originally Raheem Morris said that the Falcons took Justin Simmons out of the game last Sunday out of more like precautionary reasons. But I'm going to be heavily monitoring what his practice reps look like. He did not practice, to your point earlier, did not practice on Wednesday. If he can't go, which, or if he's even kind of not 100%, how does that affect what this defense, this secondary can do? Are we going to see more of Richie Grant? Like, is that something that we can kind of think about? And how does he fit? And how much more does Jesse Bates put on his plate? And how much more are you relying on some of these other guys? D. Alford in the slot, AJ and Mike Hughes out wide, Clark Phillips accordingly. That to me is going to be the storyline heading into this game is what happens with Justin Simmons and how that affects what this secondary looks like. And you hope, knock on wood, that he's fine and he's 100% and he goes on Sunday. But again, hamstring injuries are tricky.
What about you, Terrin?
When it comes to the passing attack versus
just our secondary, their passing attack.
That's what I'm most excited about because we have talked endlessly about how strong the secondary has been about ending explosive plays and where it's like, all right, number one pass team is coming in. Stand your ground.
Yeah. It's kind of similar to how we felt coming into the Saints game.
Yes.
Where it was very much like, Derek Carr and...
He was airing it out at that point.
Yeah. It was a very different Saints team.
And then he didn't do that.
And then they went up against Atlanta and it broke them. No, this is a real good on good matchup though. And I kind of feel like it plays into the Falcons' favor. Obviously, I'll say that, right? But just because of the way that Seattle really wants to attack through the air. Jackson Smith and Jigba has been kind of their short route guy, but Tyler Lockett is in that intermediate route, but really DK Metcalf. He's 4th in the NFL in receiving yards, and he just is down the field constantly. And so if the Seahawks, kind of like some of these other teams have tried to do, I think we saw Kansas City get a little bit impatient, try to take some of those shots to the end zone. What happened? One was picked, the other should have been picked. And I'm curious to see if that's what Seattle ultimately ends up doing, or if Geno is, being the veteran that he is able to stay patient, kind of in the way. I honestly wouldn't be shocked if it is a little bit like Andy Dalton. Just kind of the checkdowns mixed with some of those intermediates and knowing when to really take your shots. And then, of course, Geno has the ability to get outside of the pocket and move much more than Andy Dalton does. So there's that element as well. But it's going to be, I think, the defining part of this game outside of maybe Atlanta's run game. If they can really get their rushing attack going against Seattle's defense, that to me has the ability to kind of like take over the game.
Yep.
But on the flip side, if it doesn't, if that's neutralized, I really am keying in on Seattle's passing attack against Atlanta's pass defense as maybe what could be the defining part of this game. So let's flip to our final topic and just discuss 3 things we feel like the Falcons need to do on Sunday to emerge with a win. Terrin, we'll start with you.
I'm going to still go with establish the run early.
Love it.
Because that's an obvious one that I believe in when it comes to getting a balanced offense, balanced breakfast.
Tried and true old football head right here, Terrin. Yep.
Don't call me old. My second thing, it's not really what they have to do. I guess kind of Justin Simmons being healthy, because here we are talking about the pass from Seattle going against the defense from Atlanta, and he is a key part of that secondary. Him and Jesse Bates out there blocking down things left and right, picking things off left and right. So him being healthy is massive. I've never had a hamstring issue. Sounds like you're really sensitive toward them.
I don't think I'm sensitive towards them. It's just like I've been around long enough to know that they are tricky. They're one of them that when people hear hamstring injuries, they're like, it's whatever. But those things can last for a long time if you don't heal them correctly.
I had one my junior year in college playing rugby, and it's like as soon as you feel good about it, and as soon as you start getting back up to like 90% full speed, it's like you feel that twinge again, and then all of a sudden you got to dial it right back.
Yeah. It sounds like an IT band a bit.
It's tough. Okay. Yeah, any of these like ligaments
problem,
or any of these like hamstrings. It's tough.
What is it? Soft tissue injuries are always tricky.
But yes, Justin Simmons being healthy is one of my 3.
Love it.
And my third is still put the game away.
Yeah.
I don't consider Carolina put away fully. Like, I do think the defense really stepped up when it had to, and it did so. But one pick, if you took away one of those picks, we could have been talking a different ending. Not ending as in outcome, but like stress levels we'll go with.
Yeah.
So those are my 3.
All right.
My 3. So the first one, score/get in the end zone, which means the same thing, following a turnover or a key stop late. So a part of the Panthers game that I think really gave us something to talk about that we hadn't to this point was when A.J. Terrell had his interception. The Falcons took 9 plays and over 5 minutes of time off the clock in the next offensive series, and they scored off of it. And that was kind of the nail in the proverbial coffin, so to speak. And I feel like that, and I said this after the game when we talked about it in the postgame podcast, but that drive, that moment, the interception followed by a long, steady, healthy drive that scored points, that to me was the moment that the Falcons hadn't had in their first 5 games of the season to that point. I want to see more of that. I want to see against the Seattle team, if they have a chance to have a moment where there's the defense causes 3 and out, or there's a pick or a fumble or whatever, that the offense turns around and gets in the end zone after that.
Complementary football.
Right. That to me is a game changer for this team, and you saw it against the Panthers. So that's number 1. Number 2 is it has to be about pass rush. You have to make Geno uncomfortable. To the stats, to the points that we were talking about earlier, there is a obvious drop off in Geno's production when he's under pressure. You have to, I don't know if that means, and I don't know if it can mean getting him on the ground, but wreaking havoc and causing him to move around in the pocket, making him uncomfortable, that is, to me, going to be a big part of this game as well.
Absolutely.
The third one, keep Bijan Robinson and Tyler Allgeier's yards per rush around 4 to 5 yards a pop. I know that's a big number, but we've seen that it happen over the course of this year. I think Tyler Allgeier, his yearly, on the year, his average is over 5.
It's 5.5.
5.5. So keep doing that. Keep those numbers around that, if not higher. If you can be higher, be higher, but keep it around 4 to 5 in the game. And I think that means that the run is being established. They're taking time off the clock. If that specific stat looks that way. So those are my 3.
And yeah, just to clarify, like Bijan is averaging 4.6 yards per carry. That's 21st in the league. Tyler, like we said, is 5.5 yards per carry. That is 6th in the league.
Yeah. So between 4 and 5.
Keep it right there.
Keep it right there.
Keep it right between the navigational beacons. Yeah. All right. So my 3 are stop long passes. We kind of already talked about this. Inherently, that is what this Atlanta defense is built to do. Mm-hmm. Seattle, they want to hit those explosive plays, right? Their offensive coordinator kind of comes from college, a lot of familiarity there. So they want to put the ball down the field and hit some of these big explosive plays. So the Falcons being able to stop that, because I do think they'll be tested a little bit more than they have been by some of these teams at times. That is going to be huge in this one. For Atlanta's offense, I think establishing the run, like you guys said, but then hitting play action off of this. This is something where when I was watching the Seattle-San Francisco game on Thursday night, you just noticed how San Francisco's play action game, and they have one of the best play action games in the NFL, was really pulling Seattle's linebackers up, and then they were hitting stuff right over top of them. I can so see that working in Atlanta's favor, right? I mean, that is just kind of what this offense is built to do.
Right.
And then finally is stopping runs in the red zone for Atlanta's defense. Seattle's success rate on red zone runs, 1st in the league. Atlanta's defense, 30th.
Wow.
In red zone runs.
So I didn't know that.
We're talking about all these passes and like them moving the ball down the field. But when the field gets condensed, which is actually when Atlanta's defense has been playing some of their best football, right? Think of all the field goals that we've seen after some of these long drives or turnovers that have then put the offense in good position immediately. They've been doing a great job. But Seattle is going to get down there and then with Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, just kind of pound the rock. And then maybe Geno's going to get involved as well. So I think when the red zone becomes a factor, really keying in on the run and stopping Seattle's rushing attack. But outside of that, let's throw the ball, baby. I want to see you get move down the field if you're Atlanta's offense. Anything else that you guys want to mention before I wrap us up?
No, I'm good.
When you were talking through that, your 3 things, something that like just kind of clicked was Seattle's going to test Atlanta's strongest points.
Yeah.
You talk about the passing defense, you talk about stopping in the red zone, and you're just like, well, they're number 1 in both. So their best is going against the best.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun matchup, and you know that Seattle is coming into this game, given that they're on a 3-game slide. Like they have to pick it up, right? So
Atlanta has to keep it up.
Yeah, exactly, right. So it'll be a really interesting test, honestly, I think, for Raheem and this coaching staff.
Yeah.
Because I was really impressed with what they did in Carolina and kind of, I know a lot of people going into that game wanted to see if Atlanta would handle the business trip. I know kind of at halftime, people on social media were not overly pleased with what they had seen, but then I thought Atlanta responded so well in that second half and did kind of what we all wanted them to do, which was just take care of business, shut the door on both sides. Like, let's see if they can keep up that mentality now that they did do that in Carolina. They've got this 3-game winning streak, and they're going up against a team that's been licking its wounds a little bit recently. Just another mental test for the Falcons.
What was it what was it that Kirk said that he wanted to see if this was a mature team? A mature team goes into this game against Seattle that's on, and this team specifically, and doesn't let their foot off of the gas.
From last week.
Yeah, a mature team doesn't look at an 0-3 team coming in when they're 3-0 coming in over the last 3 weeks and just kind of is sitting back like, it'll be fine. A mature team doesn't do that. A mature team acts like the Seahawks have won their last 3.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. We will see if the Falcons are a mature team on Sunday. We, of course, are the most mature podcast in the whole Falcons family. So, I mean, thank you guys so much for listening to our just high level maturity today. But that will do it for Falcons Final Whistle, presented by Zaxby's. Thank you guys so much for listening. Check out Falcons Seahawks, 1:00 p.m. kickoff in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. You can catch it on Fox. Be sure to check out our Falcons pregame show, which goes live on YouTube an hour before kickoff. So if you want even more coverage, check that out. Check out Falcons Audible. They also did an amazing job breaking down this game. And be sure to like, subscribe, rate, review, do all of that stuff if you're catching us on YouTube, if you're catching us on your favorite podcast platform. just make sure you let us know how we're doing and give us that thumbs up. So that will do it for us today. Thank you guys so much for watching, listening, wherever you are. And until next time, take care.